the movie that we're crowdfunding on Indiegogo right now to make, not only will it contain all the evidence showing that Canada didn't confederate, Canada doesn't have a constitution, Canada is not a sovereign nation, but for the last half hour or so of the movie, we're going to explain to the people how they can actually hold a constitutional convention, seat a de jure government under their own constitution in all the provinces, and then if they so choose to, hold a constitutional convention for those provinces to seat a federal authority properly. And the three most important words of any constitution are the same ones that you see in the American Constitution. The starting phrase is "we, the people." The whole idea is, in 1931, when the Statutes of Westminster was put through, it ended the British North American Act, and it allowed Canada to confederate, to go to the will of the people, to turn around and hold either constitutional conventions or conventions for confederations in all the provinces, and then confederate to a federal authority. And the powers that be in Ottawa and in the UK didn't want that to happen, simply because it would have eliminated their power structure. It would have taken all that they had thought they worked for over the years in putting their criminal activities together. It would have taken them all away, because once you put the power back into the hands of the people, those that are in power then would have lost it. And so they continued to have the illusion that we had confederated, and that we were a constitutional monarchy, et cetera, et cetera. The Walter Cool letter up there, and Walter Cool was a backbencher in Ottawa in the 1920s and 1930s, and he wrote a letter, very famous letter, to René Lévesque in 1976, when René Lévesque was having a big thing in Quebec for the PQ. They wanted to do a big separation. And so he wrote a letter saying, Mr. Lévesque, you can't have a divorce without first having a marriage. Canada never confederated. You're already a sovereign nation. So René, he went to Ottawa to see Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and he went into the office of Trudeau, and he threw the letter at him, and he said, read this and tell me, is it true or not? And Trudeau read the letter, and he said, yes, it's true, but you shut up and go back to Quebec. Here's 2 big suitcases full of money. Now piss off. Of course he knew. All of the premiers, all the prime ministers know. In order to continue the myth going on that, oh, we need to separate from Canada, the reality is that all they had to do was hold a constitutional convention, seat a de jure government, and they're done. Money and power. So they wanted to maintain the power structure that they had in Quebec by continuing the lie of the separation.
I see. And
then in order to tax the Quebecers so they could enlighten them or fill their own bank accounts. We're not a party to the contract. If you read the Constitution Act of 1982, in section, I think it was 19.1 and 19.2, it only applies to the members of the federal government and members of the provincial government. They're the party to the contract. So they're the only ones that can actually get paid. I asked the simple question. In 2017, we're celebrating 150 years of Confederation. They say in 1867, the British North American Act caused Canada to confederate.
Right.
In 1889, the Interpretation Act that was created in the UK said that the Dominion of Canada was a colony. So how can we have confederated in 1867 and be a colony in 1889?
Well, then we had the Statute of Westminster,
correct? That ended the British North American Act. But prior to that ending, they did something very, very smart. Queen Victoria, she wanted to end the monarch of Canada, and in 1893, they did what they called the Statutes Law Revision Act, which took out the enacting clause from the British North American Act, but also more importantly, it took out Section 2 of the British North American Act, which said that there was a monarch in perpetuity through heredity. It eliminated that. So in 1901, when she passed away, the monarchy ended in Canada. So I asked the question, in 1982, when Pierre Elliott Trudeau went to England, what queen was he taking the Canada Act to? Because it certainly wasn't the Queen of Canada. We hadn't had one since 1901. The whole idea is, in 1931, when the Statutes of Westminster was put through, it ended the British North American Act, and it allowed Canada to confederate, to go to the will of the people, to turn around and hold either constitutional conventions or conventions for confederations in all the provinces, and then confederate to a federal authority. And the powers that be in Ottawa and in the UK didn't want that to happen simply because it would have eliminated their power structure. It would have taken all that they had thought they worked for over the years in putting their criminal activities together. It would have taken them all away, because once you put the power back into the hands of the people, those that are in power then would have lost it. And so they continued to have the illusion that we had confederated and that we were a constitutional monarchy, et cetera, et cetera. And if you actually go to the website of nephilimfilms.com and go to where our project is, there's a timeline on there. And we go into explaining what happened after 1931 and the various iterations on the British North American Act that they called the Constitution Act. 1939, 1940, 1942, 1965, 1971, et cetera, et cetera. But they're all were just the British North American Act that was a dead document. But it was there as an overlay to pretend that we had done what they say we had done, which was a lie. If it's an illegal and unlawful overlay that they've done to us, they're even I remember Harper, when he was governor a few years ago, he was in an interview in Calgary, and he made claim that the federal government is a de facto government, which means it's an unlawful and illegal government. The Governor General just recently, the one before the one that's in there now, she made it very clear that she was a de facto head of state. De facto means unlawful and illegal. Yes, the simple answer to that is yes, you're absolutely correct, that taxes would be considered illegal here. Once again, it circles back to the contract. The contract, the overlay that they call the Constitution Act 1982, does not apply to us. It only applies to them.
Who's them?
The right honorables, the politicians that sit in power today, and the permanent secretaries that are behind them, the permanent government that we don't vote for.
You mean the bureaucracy,
the
high-level
bureaucracy, the high-level bureaucracy. Russell Rogers Smith. Never before have so many known so little about so much. Now, Russell Rogers Smith is a very interesting character because he was, in the 1930s, he was the gentleman that created the 3 clauses that Mackenzie King took to the UK that were then taken verbatim and inserted into the Statute of Westminster that allowed Canada to confederate.
Okay.
And by doing that, we had the freedom now to do just that, to go on and become a sovereign nation, which the mandarins, or as you call it, the bureaucrats, didn't allow that. They didn't want to lose their power base. Once again, we're just back to that. When they did create they finally got to the point where Trudeau, created the Canada Act, took it to England, and had the Queen take it to a foreign parliament called the UK Parliament, and create the Constitution Act 1982, which he then patriated to Canada. Not back to Canada, but came for the first time. And part of that you don't see in the regular documentation is the British North American Act. Because the British North American Act in 1867 was never given to Canada. It was never run through Parliament. It was done as an order in council, and it was used as the letters patent for the corporation sole known as Canada.
And we have the opportunity now in Canada to really create a country that we want.
The movie that we're crowdfunding on Indiegogo right now to make, not only will it contain all the evidence showing that Canada didn't confederate, Canada doesn't have a constitution, Canada is not a sovereign nation, but for the last half hour or so of the movie, we're going to explain to the people how they can actually hold a constitutional convention, seat a de jure government under their own constitution in all the provinces, and then if they so choose to, hold a constitutional convention for those provinces to seat a federal authority properly. And the 3 most important words of any constitution are the same ones that you see in the American Constitution. The starting phrase is "we, the people." You're not breaking the law by holding a constitutional convention, actually being lawful and legal. If they were to come after you, you have remedy against them because they're unlawful and illegal.
Who needs special powers? The politicians. They're the ones who want special powers naturally because they're in the power game. And what they can get from Ottawa, they will have more in Charlottetown, in Quebec City, in Victoria, BC. That's the game of politics, power.
I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors. So help me God.
Top 10% now in Canada own about half the wealth in the entire country. So it's that dramatic at this point.